Hello, welcome to our stream. Today we are going to be talking about how to learn color through fashion. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. Now, Lauryn, I think for a lot of people, usually when they think about learning color, they think about things like the color wheel, lots of charts and diagrams and all this stuff, which is fine. We've used these charts ourselves here at Art Prof. But my fundamental issue is that you can learn all of the basics of color and know it inside out, but then bridging the gap from this technical information to your paintings or whatever you're making, or even just a real life, can sometimes be very hard for people. Was that the case for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember in college, I've always been really crazy about color ever since I was very young. And that could be because my family, there are artists in my family. My dad is really into super saturated color. It could be an influence from him. But the joke was in school that I would have these crazy color, beautiful clothes. I love color so much, but my actual understanding of color theory and how to use it in my work was terrible. It was so bad. I was accused or judged of having trashy looking paintings that looked like Lisa Frank because I just didn't understand color hierarchy at all. So they're two different skills. I think they're really two different skills or two different contexts. And just because you know one doesn't mean that you know the other.
So that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this stream, to tell you guys, listen, color's everywhere. Like, no matter where you look, there's color. And I honestly think one of the best ways to train your eye as an artist is just during the day. You're going for a walk or you're making pasta, just mundane, boring things. Notice the value of something. Notice the texture. Notice the saturation. It makes it more real.
Yes. When we are talking about being an artist, we talk about that sketchbook stuff. We talk about having a studio and learning anatomy and all these little skills. But one skill I think is adopting that lifestyle component, that lens, seeing like an artist, where even though you're not in studio drawing something or you're not physically practicing, you're walking around and you say, oh, well, that would make a really interesting composition right there. Or, oh, those colors together, wow, they're really great. I'm just going to take a picture of that, save that for later, or mark that down, save that for later. I think that skill developed for me, I think, halfway through college. I started really paying attention to those things and making note of them wherever I went. And it's probably the most pleasurable part about being an artist, is that you do see everything as inspiration to you. Anything could be a part of your work.
I think that's a really healthy mindset, because oftentimes people will say, okay, well, I want to be a figure painter. I should look at figure paintings. Of course, yeah, duh. But the thing is, you're getting inspiration from this kimono, Lauryn. And it's like, you're not an apparel designer. You're not going to make your own kimonos. And yet for you, this was an inspiration for how you thought about color. So can you explain how this kimono fits into your outfits and your artwork?
Yes. So actually, I didn't start with this kimono specifically, or this boro style of working. Boro, I think, means Japanese. It's a Japanese form of patching clothing, patching old clothing from the 1800s, 1900s, I think. And it's just to make the clothes reusable. It's recycled art, recycled fashion, basically. But it comes in these really beautiful forms. You have all these great indigo dyes. But where I first started was looking at one of my favorite singers, Yonsei, and he had these beautiful shirts that were all patched together. And I said, oh, I want to make one of those. And then I somehow traced it back to these kimonos being probably the original inspiration for the fashion group after that made those shirts for him. So I think actually the kimonos are the real deal, and the blankets and things, because this dye process and this mending process is something that's been honed over many, many, many years. It's really become an art form in and of itself and part of the culture. So I was really happy to find that as a reference.
Neil says, here we are, Lauryn with her colorful scarf thing and Professor Lieu with her black and gray shirt tells a lot about y'all's color taste. Sometimes I think, Lauryn, people really do look like their artwork. I mean, like, I am a monochromatic artist. I rarely wear anything with color. If I do, it's like black with a tint of purple. Like, I rarely have colors in my clothing. So I'm curious, how many of you here in the chat dress like your artwork or if it's totally unrelated?
It's like dog owners, their dogs look like them, and artists, their paintings or whatever they make maybe looks like them.
I definitely look like my artwork, and that's the way I use color. When I use color, it's a tint. It's never about full out cadmium red. So it is funny the way a lot of this, just without you even trying, it just leaks into all these different parts of your life. Totally. And we have a comment here from Amaris who says, I'm learning graphic design and textiles. I turn my own character into a pattern and put on a sweater. Now I'm playing around with the colors. So do you do that, Lauryn, when you are getting dressed? Are you mixing and matching, or do you just toss it on and go out?
Mostly I toss it on and go out, but I think that comes from having done that process over and over and over again, where there is a very quick judgment or comparison thing going on in my head where, oh, well, these pants are orange, and they're basic, they're one color. So that means having something patterned, high contrast, maybe something cooler on top, that would make a lot of sense to me. So it's not conscious, but that's only because it was conscious at one point that I was doing that.
So Lauryn, were you consciously thinking about, oh, I want to learn color through fashion, or did it just happen and then you noticed it?
No, it took the prompting from one of my professors my senior year of school. He was my mentor professor, and I was just having such a hard time getting my color relationships right. Everything was so loud and chaotic. It wasn't working. And he said, why is this so hard for you? You do it with your clothing so well. Maybe you should be taking little screenshots of that or taking note of that and using that in your paintings. And that just blew my mind, because I was also in these education classes at the time that was talking about the transfer of knowledge, how you can learn something in a classroom setting like a math equation or like color theory, but then you don't know how to apply it to the real world, because contextualizing that is a totally different skill. And so actually the mixing and matching of clothing, that was something I knew, something I did every day, I practiced. That made it so I could take that knowledge from there and use it in my paintings. And this was very specific, very overt at first. Some of the images you're flipping through, it was literally, oh, I take a picture of something I was wearing and take a bunch of that and put it directly in the painting without changing too much. But over time, since it's become more natural and I've learned the skill, I haven't mastered the skill. I still have lots of problems, but it's become, I don't need the clothes so much anymore. Now it comes a little bit more easily.
It's funny how sometimes as an artist, we're like trying so hard to get better at this one skill. and yet we're doing it in another place. And sometimes it's hard to make that connection, because you might say as a painter, oh, well, that's just what I wear. That doesn't have anything to do. But I'm totally convinced it's all connected, because it's not an accident that I wear blacks and grays.
Yeah, and I think also this can be very empowering for people that, say, don't have a lot of time to spend a whole day working on a painting at once, or they can't make it their one career thing. They feel like, oh, I don't have that time to be in the studio, I don't have time to learn. This can help you feel like, oh, you can still practice. You can still practice with studio related things outside of actually making the image. You can be more efficient about how you live your life as an artist and as a person with a day job.
Emily says, this is taking me back to when I worked in a high-end boutique and I had to dress women of varying, quote, boldness all the time. That sounds amazing. I feel like that would be an art form in itself, because you do find yourself making those visual decisions. You might not think you're doing it, but you're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, we're talking about using fashion right now in, I'm going to say, two-dimensional art, mostly sculpture, fine art. But fashion is in and of itself an art form that uses all the elements of art that we've talked about. So that is also a thing that people do. And also, I want to know how many people in the chat watched What Not to Wear at one point or other on TLC. Because, well, I definitely didn't agree with all of Stacey and Clinton's options on that show, or all of their things that they thought were really cool. I thought it was really interesting to watch.
Maria says, half my wardrobe is black. Morticia Adams is my icon, and most of my sketchbook is made with black liners. I see a pattern.
Black is a popular color.
I just think that as an artist, we don't have to keep our studio practice that separate from everything. Because, Lauryn, oftentimes I see things and I don't have time to make an artwork of it, but I saw that. And I like to just keep that little piece in my head. It all goes to the same pot.
It does. It does. It all stews there with all of your past experiences, your background, your likes, your dislikes. It becomes a part of the real stew there.
Neil is asking, Lauryn, what are your motivations for dressing up, especially during these weird times? I'm a t-shirt and loose shorts kind of guy. I want to branch out in fashion, but I don't know how.
You're breaking up a little bit there, so hopefully I come through here. But I think, okay, originally when I was a kid, like 8 years old, 7 years old, I don't know, between that and age 13, I really was also a t-shirt and shorts kind of person. I dressed in sweatpants. I was all for comfort, all that. My parents dressed me up when I was really little, but that doesn't count. And then I think I was 13, and I bought this book called Fruits, and I still have this book. And it is all about Harajuku fashion, and it was just like Humans of New York, except in Japan back in 2000. I'm going to date myself, like 2003, 2004, I think. And I was obsessed with this. I thought it was amazing. I wanted to be these people. It was so out there. I mean, it really shows the art form, though. It brings clothes out of this kind of just functional purpose and more into this artful kind of way. And I was still an artist at the time. I still like to draw and stuff, so I would make my own manga characters that had these crazy outfits. And then after a little while, I thought, why am I just drawing it? Why can't I just do this for myself? Because that's what I really want. Like, all of this is just wish fulfillment, me drawing these things. So I really got into it about age 13, and it is just kept up from there.
Rebecca says, my painting palette looks not only like what I wear, but also the palette of nature where I live. Well, let's talk about that, Lauryn, because you have heard me say before on streams that color is all about context, that
Yes.
the nature of a certain shade of pink is determined by the color next to it. And I think fruits is a really great example, because you take the pink hair, you put it next to black and white stripes, it's going to be very different than if it's next to yellow. And so not just within the outfit, but the environment. And actually,
Yes.
Lauryn, let's go back and look at some of your camouflage pieces, because you have a lot of pieces where the background is just as important as what's going on in the figure.
Yes. So I am really happy that that comment was brought up there, because yes, it is all about context. It is all about where you're at. There's never a color that is just on its own in a vacuum. And at least for the camouflage pieces, that was very specific. That was trying to match the color on the figure with the color in the background for someone who had deuteranopia, which is it's green color blindness, red-green color blindness that is green week. There's a whole thing in that in and of itself. But then also, I think based on where you live, you have a different kind of sunlight. You have different objects, different houses, different trees and things around you. And so up in the Northeast, I have a very different set of colors around me than, say, when we were in Guangzhou in China, and everything was really hot and all the colors were very hot, but we also had that city density to it. And so I'd say my color is like very New England based. I look at a lot of neutrals contrasted against really bright colors, oranges, reds. Think of foliage from autumn and all that. But one thing that I'm really interested in, I've been talking with my friend Sonia about, is this batik pattern, batik type of working, where you have this wax resist kind of stuff for clothing. It's really popular in West Africa. And this designer, Mapate Diop, released this line of clothing that I love it, that's based off of these patterns and this clothing from West Africa. And you can tell there's a huge difference here with the types of contrasts that are happening, with the saturation, with the proportions of saturated colors versus not saturated colors, or colors versus black, or large blocks of color versus smaller blocks of color. So it's all really dependent on what your culture is, what your environment is, what your history is. All of these create different sets of color relationships and pattern relationships, texture relationships.
This is a marker drawing techniques tutorial that Lauryn did, and it's so fun to watch Lauryn put together the still life, because to me, still life is how I learned color, because I was not good with all the charts and diagrams and things. And I just found when I had an object and it was wearing a hot pink swimming suit next to a boa, it made things a lot easier for me. There's a very funny story behind the still life, and if you don't know the story, you're gonna have to watch the tutorial, because it's pretty entertaining. It created a very teachable moment. We could show you guys how to reset up your still life when unexpected things occur. But to me, Lauryn, nobody else could have made the still life. Like, this is a still life that was created with your color and pattern sensibilities. So it leaks into everything that you do.
Definitely. And I think part of that too is because I think half those things that we brought for that still life were also different pieces of clothing, bandanas that I had in my collection. So it all blends together. Yeah, all the things that you're showing here, all these paintings, you could trace back to a particular textile that I had. Even the things with the metallics are probably coming from different scarves that I had that would have weavings of gold thread in them, where the gold is very close together, but it's also interwoven with bits of black and blue. And it gives this very optical mixing, buzzy kind of effect.
Elizabeth says, when I couldn't paint several days a week, I did wear specific color combinations. In the past year, I've been able to paint nearly every day. My clothing has moved to gray and some blue. I know, isn't that amazing how everything influences everything else? All right, we have to talk about David Bowie. He is the rock, the foundation,
yes, the foundation.
of everything for you, literally.
Yes. David Bowie is my idol, especially when I was at RISD. If you don't remember, Casey, one of our old teaching artists, he was also very into David Bowie, and we had this fan club obsession together.
Tell me in the chat, who here is a David Bowie fan? Who here has no idea who we're talking about and is Googling David Bowie as we speak? I would just like to know. So what's the deal with you and David Bowie, Lauryn, in a nutshell?
I mean, there are many things. First of all, he's an amazing musician, amazing chameleon of a person, has gone through many different styles and has brought them about very convincingly across his life, both in his outfits and the way that he looks and in his music. I love that these things match up. But then also going through his particular earlier phases, I think they were very important, both showing a kind of fashion that wasn't reliant on a very femme woman, beautiful model. Like dresses and things, they're great. They're wonderful. I love looking at these really beautiful and delicate architectural pieces of clothing, but not my thing. You know, I don't wear jewelry. I don't do any of that. So David Bowie fit this kind of androgynous style that I really love, while still also having this huge array and attention to the beauty and the color relationships and the forms of clothing, and it's really easily translatable to art. So the images you're going through right now are slightly after my main David Bowie phase, when I went into my red year. My red
you have
year,
multiple phases, correct?
Phases, just like David Bowie. So I had the whole red mullet, which my mom cut for me every few months. She did a great job, right? This is all real hair. I never went to a stylist ever. And then after going through that phase, I did actually it was 18 months where everything in my life was all red. All my clothing, all of my things that I owned in my house. I tried to eat red for a little while. I tried to paint red. Both of those things were not sustainable. I couldn't do it over time. Dietarily, really not good to do. And also painting wise, it screwed up my color hierarchy for a very long time. Because when you're painting within that very small range, you are just really tuned to that range, but you lose all of your experience with all the other colors.
See, that's what I love about you, Lauryn. Nothing is halfway. You are all in or you are all out. And I cannot believe you sustained this as long as you did.
Well, so this is the thing too, Clara, was that I wasn't really painting that hardcore at the time. I was more into this performative kind of work where there was... I was following all of these different social aspects. I kept a journal of all this. I took pictures of all of the outfits over time, but I wasn't doing this painting and studio stuff all the time like I do now. And so one thing I've noticed is that actually this is almost what I did the red year in 2013. So we're like 8 years out from that. And I don't pay that much attention or put that much care into, I guess, dressing up than I did back then, but I'm spending a lot more time in studio working on the painting. So I'm just going to say that the art form just transferred from one area of my life to the other area of my life.
I just love that so much because it's like you can't have both. It's either the outfits or the painting, right?
Well, I'm sure that you could have both, but then I'd have to give up on a different part of my life. There's only so much time to do things, and the kind of upkeep it takes for that, even just to do the hair and to have like all the clothes and all of that. You know, I just, It's good if I can get a shower now, and if I can buzz my hair or have my partner cut my hair like once in a while, like that. That is
That's an
fine.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Lauryn's not the only person who has dove in so dramatically into color. Can you tell us about Elizabeth Sweetheart, who is known as, quote, the Green Lady of Brooklyn? Who is she?
Yes. So what happened was, let's see, before I knew a lot about New York, I knew about the Green Lady of Brooklyn. I studied monochromats for a while during this red year phase. Monochromat is, in my definition, someone who only dresses or lives within one color or an analogous range of colors. So Elizabeth Sweetheart was the best and biggest thing or person example I could find for any color, really, but specifically green. Green is a really hard color to do. Blue's really easy. I think yellow, honestly, is easy enough. Black is super easy. Green is hard. You have to go hardcore to do everything in green. And she came to my attention after I was in Humans of New York back at RISD, and people are like, oh, this reminds me of the Green Lady. This reminds me of the Green Lady. I'm like, who's the Green Lady? And the New York Times did an entire feature on her a few years later. And I was like, wow, this person is my idol. Oh my God, they have taken it to the level that I would need or I would want in my life.
Emily says, since you're complementary colors, would you have had to fight her if you met her?
That's a great question. I've reached out to the New York Times. I've reached out to several sources to find her, to get like her contact information or something, because I did really want to talk with her. But who am I? Nobody knows me. I could be like some creep. So Elizabeth Sweetheart, if you're out there and you watch this video, I would love to talk with you. I'd love to hear about your experience. I feel like we would have a lot to talk about and be really interested in seeing your house.
I feel like the biggest challenge is keeping that green color of her hair. Like, that's not an easy color to maintain in terms of hair dye.
Yeah. I mean, all of it, though, really. How you also have to commit to having all of these green appliances in your house, which I don't know. I wonder if she has a green car. She probably doesn't have a car because she lives in Brooklyn.
All right. And I'm sure a lot of you have maybe seen Kusama, who is a Japanese artist. Her work has been all over, totally the quintessential Instagrammable artwork that we're seeing everywhere. And we do have a crit clash where Lauryn and I talk about her work, so you guys can check that out. But when did you discover Kusama, Lauryn?
I think that was also at RISD. I didn't really understand who she was, and I didn't realize that she was a painter or a performance artist. It was probably when I was at Purchase around 2014 that I made the connection that she was doing a lot of these things, had started in performance, doing the spots, painting on people. She had happenings, but then went into this painting world, also went into the fashion world more recently, really big time. So she's done the full, that thing that we were talking about, taking fashion, putting into your paintings. She took her paintings or the motif that she did and brought it into fashion and installation too. So it's really cool to see that movement as well, and also see her become a part of her installations. I think she's a great example of someone who really lives their work in a meaningful way.
See, to me, Lauryn, this looks like so much work. Okay, so we have a number of people coming up. Like, we have Bjork. Yeah. We also have, I cannot believe I don't know who this is. Grimes. Yes.
Yeah.
Grimes. Who here knows? Okay, help me out, guys. Who knows who Grimes is? I don't. Who is Grimes, Lauryn?
Okay. I have such a fraught relationship with Grimes. Grimes is someone who, she's done electronic music. That's what she's known for. And she's really brilliant. Her music is really interesting, pulls from a variety of sources, has a ton of different genres to it. But she also has these crazy, almost rave type outfits. And I just really loved her style. And then she married Elon Musk and had a baby recently.
That's who she is.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, now I know.
So the Elon Musk thing, I mean, it depends how you feel about Elon Musk, which is not the point of the stream. But Grimes is an artist and fashion icon, is someone who I greatly admire. And I wish I could do her look and my look are actually, I think, very different. I would never touch camo. It's just a pattern that I'm not into. And I don't really do the checkers either. I think that's like really harsh, but she's able to put these really harsh patterns together and these really difficult colors together in a way that I think works very well.
Vivi Adams says, did Grimes do the theme music for Hilda?
I don't know what Hilda is. I'm sorry.
Well, Smiley Face says Grimes did do the Hilda intro.
What is Hilda a show? I'm sorry, guys. You're going to have to let me know.
I don't know about Grimes and I don't know about Hilda, Lauryn.
I got really I liked Art Angels a lot. That was probably like the more poppy album that she did. She's known for that song Oblivion that was really big back in, like, I don't know, when Animal Collective was big at 2012, 14, something like that. Has a whole history of music. You can go through it on your own if you want.
But really, I mean, what we're trying to tell you guys is that you shouldn't have to work that hard to study this stuff. Like, it really can be fun and casual. I don't think that you always have to be immersed in some thick, dusty textbook to learn this stuff. You can find this on the cover of People magazine if you want. I think that art really can spread itself all over the place, regardless of what type of artist you are.
Totally. Yeah, I definitely agree. This should be, none of this stuff takes work, really. It's that fun thing where you go down the internet wormhole and you say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's so interesting. And you find a new person that you just love. Fandom is a part of learning artwork, you know?
CJ says, Lauryn, have you ever worked in textile pattern design? It's something I've been thinking about getting into recently.
Yes. Surface design is something that interests me immensely. I have several friends that are in surface design. I really, really want to do it. It's just a matter of time. I don't have enough time in my life to learn a new skill or figure out a way to scale up on something that I make. I've made plenty of patterns and I've even produced them as say wrapping papers or textiles, but I don't know how to get from, say, spoon flour, very expensive samples, to something that is more easy for me to invest in and share with people.
I mean, another thing I might recommend, those of you who are interested in textiles, there's so much historical stuff on textiles. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Like, even just historical wallpapers alone.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a whole world. And I just don't think if I'm a painter, I'm only going to look at paintings. Like, people can get inspiration from all different places. All right. How about... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to be the first to say that if you're a painter, don't just stick with paintings. Painting is so bogged down in a certain kind of canon and history that it can actually make you really tied up and tight in what you do. I think painting is so much more interesting when you are pulling from a broad number of sources and mediums and fields.
How about Hunter Schafer, who I have slowly started to figure out. I just watched the first episode of Euphoria, which is that show with Zendaya that's on HBO. I have not gotten beyond the first episode, but now I'm starting to recognize who Hunter Schafer is.
Yeah. Oh, that show. Yeah. So I learned about Hunter Schafer through Euphoria, and she is just every scene of her and her outfits. I'm like, ah. They're so good, and they're also so. I think you can see a lot of recycled fashion, but I felt, things that are clearly from the 80s or the 70s or the 90s, stuff like that. But I felt like every outfit of hers from the show was just like really interesting. It was truly art, but also something that I thought was generally wearable. Totally not my style at all. I don't think I would ever wear a crop top in my life, but but there's just something I've definitely taken from the color palettes of both Euphoria and the makeup too from from the show and from the outfits as well.
I mean, even if you don't want to watch the actual show, just Google image search Euphoria HBO, because I've watched a little bit of it, but a lot of the stills are just gorgeous. And not just because of the patterns and color, but it's also the lighting, like the theatricality of it. It really feels like almost a painted film. So you don't have to watch it necessarily, but I feel that it's very stylized, and it really is all about light and color. So it's a great example of that.
Yeah. I can't see. I could never pull off this outfit. I'd be way too scared. Not me, but again, it's like a wish fulfillment thing. I think all paintings are a little bit of wish fulfillment, at least in my practice. And so I'll just take all of this. I'll take all of that kind of compositional juiciness and color juiciness and bring it into my paintings. And that is enough for me.
We have an Art Prof Share today. Art Prof Share is where one of you creates an artwork, or in this case, many artworks from many tutorials that they watched, and shows us what they created. So today's Art Prof Share is from Hutchin Kurolo. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Hutchin. I don't know if you're live in the chat. If you are, please say hello. And Hutchin says that it's been a long journey for these still lives. I first started with the ugly vase and dry flower back in 2019. Still life is boring, period, until I saw your lobster video and I thought, okay, I can give it a try. Hutchin says, but before I started the lobster, I want to try your crystal ball. It's actually this cheap rubber ball that I bought at the grocery store. It's like really ugly, but I kept calling it a crystal ball in the tutorials. And so this is a water mixable oil painting stream. There were 4 to finish the actual painting. And this is the reference photo, which, by the way, is available on our Flickr page if anybody wants to check that out. And Hutchin did several paintings. So there's gouache, there's oil, there's watercolor. And he also says about getting inspired by your mushroom dry brush technique in Utah. And he says, it's the first time I tried gouache and I hated it. You're not the only one. I'm not good at gouache either. And Hutchin says, the lobster piece was an 8-hour effort, and I think I love it. Art Prof not only gave me a platform to learn, but also to be with me when I paint. Painting is not linear. It is back and forth. Don't expect it to get better soon. It will look ugly for a long time. Seeing you also struggling with that made me feel like, oh, it's normal. Just keep going. Awesome. What do you think, Lauryn? Check this out.
Wow. So I'm loving all of these paintings here. First of all, so many. I'm so pleased with the dedication that you have in putting together all of these images. But also what I love, yes, I love that compilation picture there, because it shows all these different lighting situations, different moods. You have that super cold, acidic yellow chartreuse color and those cold purples. That's a palette I definitely want to use at some point. But then you have this really warm, inviting, almost appetizing, like warm yellow and purple. And same with this piece. The colors are just so rich, and you have a really good understanding of them, bringing these palettes from one piece to the next. And so I'm really excited to see what you do with still life in the future. It seems like you've really found a niche here for you.
I just want to give a shout out because Hutchin is live with us here in the chat. We love it so much when you guys show us what you make. It's incredibly inspiring because ultimately we want you to take the raw knowledge that we give you and to apply it in your own way. And what I really like about these paintings, Hutchin, is that we're seeing how you change your personality based on the material. Like your lobster piece has a really different feel than even the other still life. But then if I go back here and I look at all of them together, it's like every single type of paint brought out a different language for you to speak in. And that's such a smart way to learn to paint, like really just diversifying your experience.
Yeah, it feels like you weren't fighting the material, and I really appreciate that. You just let it dictate what it was that needed to be painted.
Yeah. So I admire very much, Hutchin, your work ethic. This is not a small amount of work. I mean, if you guys think about how long it takes to do one of these, much less 5, and then to watch all the videos and listen, this is a lot of work. And so I'm just blown away by your accomplishments, and keep going because this is just the beginning. This is very, very exciting. So if any of you create artwork or artworks in relation to or in response to one of our videos, and you would like to be considered for a shout out here on YouTube, just go to artprof.org with our out-of-date slide, and you want to click on tutorials to submit your Art Prof Share. We have the submission form, and we will consider that for a YouTube stream. Or if you want to just tag us on Instagram, just use hashtag ArtProfShare, and we love sharing these in our stories. And I know you guys love seeing what other people are doing. It's really incredible what you can do as an international audience. Hutchin says, thanks, guys. I will keep painting. I am painting some of them. Oh my gosh.
I'd like a picture of that.
That is so good. I just love that. We have many other streams about different aspects of color that all of you can check out. And also, this Google slideshow is available. The link is in the YouTube video description below. It's also on artprof.org. ArtProf is a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And in a few minutes, Lauryn and I will be hanging out in the ArtProf Discord. We will be in the post live streams channel, so you can pick her brain about fashion. Please don't pick my brain about fashion because you will not get anything good. Subscribe to our channel so you can continue to grow and develop as an artist. And a big shout out to our top Patreon supporters, because Lauryn, look at this. I mean, a couple months ago, we didn't even have a second slide.
I know, it keeps growing and growing and growing. Every time I do a stream with you, I see new names, and that just delights me so much. Thank you, guys.
It's amazing.
You're making
we wouldn't be here without you.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.